new condo project way out in the west sold out almost all its units over its launch weekend at the end of April. Tengah Garden Residences moved 853 of 863 units at an average of $2,120 per square foot. Now, 90% of the buyers were Singaporean. Just for context, the prices for a 3-bedroom unit started from $1.59 million. And this is in Tengah. Now, despite all our complaints about high property prices and the uncertain global outlook, Singaporeans are still willing to fork out large chunks of money for new unsubsidized private residential properties. Now, who exactly are these buyers? Hi guys, I'm Natasha and welcome to another episode of The Usual Place, the podcast where we have real conversations about the headlines. Now, in today's episode, I want to find out what's driving these record new launch condo prices. And I'm going to get into it with my two guests, Chuin Ting Weber, CEO and Chief Investment Officer of MoneyOwl, a financial advisory firm and social enterprise under Temasek Trust. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Natasha.
And I'm welcoming back Nicholas Mak, a veteran property analyst and Chief Research Officer of property portal MOGUL.sg. Welcome back, Nicholas.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no worries. I want to start with the new condo launches I mentioned. So in April, Tengah Garden Residences transacted prices ranging from $1,779 per square feet to $2,340 per square feet. Again, I have to emphasize this. This is in Tengah. It's a new developing town. It's so basically still relatively undeveloped.
Yep.
But there's also Villa Bay, which is the first private condo in the new Bayshore housing precinct, and it sold for an average price of $2,886 per square feet.
Yeah.
So quite eye-popping numbers.
Yes.
So Nicholas, let's start with you. Did these prices surprise you? Because, how did condo prices actually it's surprising for me because it's like far out places. Mm-hmm. And, who are these people buying for it? But maybe we should start with, were you surprised?
Partially, yes. Especially the second one, Villa Bay. I know that the developers bought that land at the record price in that year when it was sold because, although it says Bayshore, but it's actually nearer to Changi Airport than, let's say, Marine Parade, for example. And for the Tengah project, yes, because we're talking about, say, before all the BTO came out, that area is more associated with the RSAF Air Base in Tengah and maybe a few chicken farms. That area is fairly undeveloped. But I think one of the reasons is that developers being profit-maximizing entities are basically pushing the boundary of the price envelope. They are trying to test. Now, when the land parcel in Tengah was sold to the developers, they were sold at $821 per square foot per plot ratio. In other words, $821 per square foot of built-up area. It was one of the lowest tendered price for all the land parcels that the government launched that year. Okay, that was last year. And so I would expect, maybe they might launch at if they launch about 1,900 or so, they will make a decent profit already. But they were pushing the envelope to $2,120 per square foot because in other parts of Singapore, in other parts of suburban areas, condos have now been launched at about that price or higher, 2,200, 2,300. So they're testing that. The second reason is because Tengah Garden Residences is next to the upcoming Hongkar MRT station. So people think that, it's now going to be difficult to buy a condo next to an MRT station. I better do that first. The third reason is because of, in a way, demand generating by property agents. This problem is not going to go away because of the high market concentration of property agencies. The three largest property agencies in Singapore basically have 75% of all the 37,000 agents in Singapore. So basically, they control a large number of that marketing power, which developers rely on to push their projects.
So, but beyond, we'll get back to a narrative in a bit, but I want to look back at the prices. How did it get here? Because you're telling me like the property developer wanted to push the envelope and just go a little bit higher, but now it's a lot higher. So how did prices get to this level? Because it seems like this kind of like the new normal in a sense, even for properties that are far out from the prime area.
I think partly it's also a sense of FOMO among home buyers who thinks that, and that FOMO in a way is also generated by property agents. You know, you better buy now or else property prices will go up, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. So that's one. And I think the other thing is that there's a number of factors. The other factors is that it has been close to a generation or more that we have not really seen a long-term sustained property downturn in terms of prices. The last time it was in 2013, and it ended in 2017. So almost for 4 years, property prices were just going down, 0.50 to 1% every quarter. And there was no light at the end of the tunnel if you're somewhere in the middle of that price decline. We have not experienced that for more than 10 years. So people have forgotten what it feels like.
Well, you said something very interesting, which is this FOMO thing about buying properties, right? Chuin Ting, I want to get you to weigh in here. What do you think about that?
I think it's very natural because we have seen a generation of Singaporeans now in 50s, 60s get rich on property. I think there's this general idea of the Singapore dream is that you start with your BTO and then you sell after minimum occupation period, then you upgrade, and at some point you end up with a big and expensive property. And that narrative has been supported by, in a sense, past results. And I guess parents are also willing to support to help their children get on the property ladder. And, in investment, we always say that past performance is no guarantee of future results. But that is how the psyche works. And in fact, you're talking about outlying areas. I believe that the outside central region property prices actually did better than the so-called central area or in the last 10 years or so. So for various reasons, I'm not the expert here. So people think, okay, why not? Yeah. So it's actually kind of counterintuitive, that in outlying areas you should be making like the biggest percentage gains. But I guess there are many factors to that, including like absolute quantum, affordability, very specific issues like the MRT, or maybe even ACS move to Tengah. Maybe all that has some connection.
But I'm very interested to find out who exactly are these people. So, Nicholas, maybe you want to walk us through the profile of these buyers. Are they like people who are upgrading from HDB? Are they dings? Or are they young people borrowing from the bank of mom and dad, as Chuin Ting was saying? Or are they like investor types?
I think it's all of the above. I think the expectations of people who say, people who go buy suburban mass market condominiums tend to be HDB upgraders. But our research actually shows that 2/3 of the buyers of OCR properties are actually, they have private address. So either they or they are living with their parents in private properties. Only 1/3 have HDB addresses. So only 1/3 of them are HDB upgraders or HDB dwellers buying for investments. So in a way, it's like the rich or the more well-off, the middle class and upper middle class is looking for ways to expand or their wealth or their investment. Perhaps they're buying also for their children, or their children who are now adults are looking to buy. Basically, in a way, they are accustomed to living in private property, so in a way moving horizontally to another private property. Another one is intergeneration wealth transfer. So you can call it the bank of mommy and daddy, or basically the parents feel that, wow, nowadays property are so expensive. I want to help my child to have a leg up in buying a property. So they may, in a way, loan or give part of the down payment to their child.
How big do you think this group is?
It's hard to say. I mean, who can tell how much money a parents pass on to the child? I mean, they just nowadays do bank transfer and so on. You never know. And it actually started even before COVID. You remember back then, with all the cooling measures, Singaporeans are still, especially the middle class, those who can afford it, are still interested to invest in properties. And what they did was they set up trusts. That was when really boom time for trust. They set out a trust for children who are under the age of 21, who legally cannot own a property by themselves. So they put that child as the sole beneficiary of that trust and then buy the property under the trust. As long as the child is a Singapore citizen, they can avoid paying the ABST for buying a second property.
Very interesting, which we'll get into in a bit, especially with the intergenerational wealth thing. But I'm still stuck in Tengah. So I want to round off that bit because
Okay.
you also did mention things about like the property market did actually come down at some point. But are buyers right to bank on the growth potential of an untested location? Because as you mentioned, property agents will tell buyers like, sure can rent one, sure can flip, sure can make money. But is it always true for all unit types? And if everyone's looking to be a landlord, who is renting?
I think there will be less renters. There will be less tenants for Tengah area because Tengah, the way that it's structured, I think is more going to be more owner occupiers there. But one of the so-called strategy or stories that property agents are telling the buyers of that Tengah project is that, just look around you. There are so many HDB flats. Some of them, the owners have already moved in. So in about 3 years' time, this condo, Tengah Garden Residences, is going to be completed. And 3 to 4 years. And in about 3 to 4 years' time, some of these residents, HDB flats dwellers, are going to have the end of their 5-year MOP. So they're eligible to buy your condo. So you can flip your condo to them at the profit.
Yeah. Okay, I'm the skeptic on this couch. Do you think you want to weigh in here about how likely is this going to happen for like people are trying to upgrade their property?
Well, I think when it comes to property as an asset class, it's very much dependent on local conditions, and this includes policy, right? So it's not like, say, you invest in global equities and all that. So everything, when it comes down to the demand, right? And the demand is also affected by affordability. Affordability including rules on debt servicing ratios, rules on loan tenures, rules on taxes, and so on. I think that structurally, the old idea of using property as the main wealth builder, I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable because property prices more or less go up with income, right? But having said that, whether or not it can give you the kind of windfalls that the previous generations has given you, I think that I would tend towards saying that you shouldn't bank on that. Yeah, so it's very chunky risk, and if you put all your eggs into the property basket, I mean, it might go up, but you must know how to monetize, and you have to be sort of subject to that risk that when you need to monetize, you may not be able to. Yeah.
I mean, I hear you, but I do think that Singaporeans are obsessed with property. Do you agree with me? Like, why are we so obsessed with it?
It's not just Singaporeans. It's basically almost around the world, in all developed economies around the world, in Australia, especially in Asia, from China to Taiwan, from Hong Kong to Manila. Those who can afford it are interested in properties because it's something that's brick and mortar. That they can associate with rather than, let's say, something like cryptocurrency that you can't touch. Another thing is that sometimes people think is this, I buy this investment property. If I can't rent it out, never mind, I'll stay in it. So it's still something that they can have alternate users if the investment doesn't quite work out.
Yeah, I think to be quite fair, property is quite a unique type of investment, and it has multiple users, which actually means that it is a good, it is a reasonable thing to spend on. And what I mean is this: property is not a pure financial asset, unlike, say, equities. Property is also, or rather, housing is also a consumption need. Because if you don't buy your property, you don't own it, you actually have to pay rent, and you're subject to rental inflation. So when you buy your own property and you own it, and 90% of Singaporeans own their own property, it's actually quite a good idea because you can actually manage, in that sense, your housing cost. Of course, the issue is that you have to do it in an affordable way and not go overboard. And property ownership goes with the psyche of ordinary people.
I mean, that's a very big part of it, right?
Yes, very big part. And I'm not just talking about the psyche of wanting to own something of your own or seeing the previous generation get rich, but it is that property keeps you invested in a way that maybe equities can't, because you don't see the volatility in the same way that you see in the stock market. You will put down a big down payment and you will pay monthly and all that. And that's actually the secret to investing. Investing is something long-term and being invested. Whereas if you see in places that have more equities culture, equities investing culture, people actually don't really know how to invest. You know, they run in and out, they try to time the market and so on. So I think it's a reasonable investment, but it should not be dependent upon as the only investment.
I mean, have we been sold the myth that property prices are ever only going to go up? Because if you look at how people are going, right, they're like, okay, this could be a property that I can flip and make money. But yes, Nicholas.
Well, the things that if you look at the trend in the last 30 years or even 40 years, that's as far back as the data will go, is that there is more upside than downside. That means the periods of time when the property prices, the price index is rising, outweighs the periods of time when it's actually declining. So even when it's declined, like during the worst decline is during the Asian financial crisis from 97 to 99. And then, but after that, subsequent declines during the SARS outbreak, during the 2008 Asian global financial crisis, it tends to be quite short-lived. So it may drop in 2008, drop for about a year, and then it rebounded. So the story is that even some property agents are telling the buyers is, don't worry, one day you recover. You know, even if you buy at the downturn, that's an opportunity, but we can't always time the market. So even if you buy at the peak, the next peak will be even higher. So that's one. The second reason why people or Singaporeans or Asians seem to be property crazy is because real estate is not just a form of investment. It's also a social status. It's also tied in with one's identity and one's way of having bragging rights.
Is it still in this day and age?
Yes,
in 2026, it's like the 5 Cs never went away. I thought they
maybe
did.
Except country club.
Yeah, okay. So the C is replaced, so it's condo twice. We get 2 properties. But yes, you were talking about social status, and I'm quite curious, like, why do we still hold on to that perception?
It does. Because to some people, especially peer pressure, maybe it's the way how Singaporeans are brought up in a very competitive education system. We must always try to be as good as our classmates or better. So when you come to the family formation age, buying a HDB, okay, everybody buy HDB. Then after that, who's the first one to upgrade? And then you upgrade, you hold a housewarming party in your new condo. You invite all your ex-classmates to come, and people will say, wow.
In the function room, near the pool.
Yes.
You can sit out, eat a barbecue.
So who's going to be the next one, and so on. So it becomes partly of that. I give one example. Singapore is one of the most expensive places on this planet to buy and own a car. And yet, see the number of Mercedes and BMWs and even Bentley and Rolls-Royce on our roads. I mean, it doesn't make sense, especially cars only have a 10-year MOP, 10-year COE period, and then it depreciates. It's basically a depreciating assets. But to some people, buying a property with a 99-year, nowadays most of them are 99-year lease, it's longer. And some of them feel that, don't worry, I can't outlive that 99-year lease, so they may still feel confident to buy it.
Chuin Ting, what's your take on the status of having a condo in your portfolio of life?
I think it's definitely valid. It's not something that people would necessarily like to admit to. They may not even think about it consciously to themselves. Rather, they would think in terms of, I have more flexibility. I'm not as subject to all these HDB rules. I'm leaving. I have value in there. I can leave it to my kids as well. Just now you were saying that a big part of the buyers actually come from private addresses. So that's about, I guess, about 20% of Singaporeans actually live in private. Our household live in private condominiums. So people do actually buy BTOs when from like children of richer parents do buy BTOs, but that's mainly for the value because they feel very smart that they're getting a subsidy from the government. But I think seeking to upgrade, that's true. I guess I just heard actually about somebody who, to meet the TDSR, the total debt servicing ratio, the stress test of that your monthly debt servicing cannot exceed 55% of your income, assuming the mortgage is at a medium term rate of, let's say, 4%. And she failed this TDSR, so she had to give up her car, right? So sometimes maybe there's a bit of like, okay, if I have to choose, because it's just too expensive to own both, maybe I'll choose the condo next to the MRT or something.
She didn't call her parents to say, help me.
I think maybe that
She didn't get the memo.
That is already done. I suspect you got So that's I think there is truth to this.
But
dynamic.
so based on our conversation, I mean, the people who bought their apartments in Tengah and Vella Bay, was it a wise decision, you think, Nicholas? Because, I mean, like we have been talking about, the property market is unpredictable. We will not know what's going to happen in 3-5 years. So, Nicholas, what do you think?
Well, again, I think there could be more upside than downside. There could be ups and downs, right? Of course. But the other thing is that the government has introduced and kept in place quite a few rounds of cooling measures. And all these cooling measures, in a way, has filtered out or discouraged short-term speculators. So in a way, it has filtered out these people, and the people who are now buying have the capability to hold that property and finance the purchase at least for 4 to 5 years. And because why for that 4-year period? Because the seller stamp duty duration is 4 years. You buy and sell a property within 4 years, you have to pay the government extra tax in terms of stamp duty. So they come in with that financial capability to buy and hold. So that in a way has led to what I would say is more medium-term speculators. People are still flipping properties, but this time after the 4 years SSD, right? And they make profit. So they see property as a way to get rich, as what you said, what their parents did. But actually, the rate of growth of property prices has slowed down. And this happens in many markets where the economy is maturing. Yeah. Right. Take, for example, in the last 10 years, the CAGR for based on the URA Private Residential Price Index is about 4.8 to 4.9% per year. I'm sure there are financial assets out there that can outperform this. But people still feel that, if I were to put something into brick and mortar, is a bit safer. And you're right. Because real estate is not mark to market. Yeah. So when there are times when property price drop, they don't feel it, not like the stocks or equities in your portfolio. You can see it almost every hour.
Yeah. Then there's also the leverage impact, right? So it's not so straightforward to say that because I pay 25% down payment, then my return is 4 times. It doesn't work that way. But if you calculate it maybe on what we call an IRR basis rather than CAGR, the difference is...
Wow, all these acronyms.
Okay, IRR is internal rate of return. So it takes into account the timing of your cash flows, including paying your mortgage, right? So the compound annualized growth rate is like you take the end equity versus your beginning equity. So it ignores the opportunity cost of you having had to pay the mortgage. But the long and short of it is that the maybe the increase about 5% after you put in a leverage impact could possibly about 7 or so. Yes, there are financial assets that on an equivalent measurement basis, be it CAGR or IRR, can give you more than that. However, I've talked about the psyche, right? Whether people can stay invested and all that. So on affordability, I think just now Nicholas mentioned that these people actually can hold. And it might seem surprising to you because you're saying, 2 million, how can you afford 2 million as a young person? So we did some calculations. If you're, say, about 35, you have a 30-year mortgage. Because affordability is as much a function of your mortgage tenure and also your interest rates and all that, and the regulation. So TDSR is based on a 4% interest rate stress test. And if you work it backwards, if you have a 30-year tenure, to buy a 2 million, actually your household income can be about 14,000. Right? And that is
But
actually
this is assuming that you have a partner and it's a combined
Yeah, yes,
income.
yes,
So if you're
combined
single and you're alone, then too bad.
single,
for
then
you.
you might buy a 1 million, then that
Just
is
the
about
1 million.
7,000.
Let me find it in my pocket.
But these numbers are for the loan. For the loan, right? Because it's the stress test is on the loan at 60%. Now, whether or not you really should max that out is a separate question. We can talk about it. But based on this stress test at 4%, 14,000 is actually the HDB income ceiling. So then the thing is, why do you choose? Would you choose a condo or HDB, or maybe let's ask the other way? Why would you not buy a condo if you're earning a household income of 14,000? Because don't forget, there is still the down payment, right? And the down payment of 2 million is 500,000 and plus a few other expenses. Can a 35-year-old couple easily find 500,000 after working for 10? You have to. I'm not so sure.
I'm also not so sure.
Yeah,
It's a bit hard, no?
So I think the intergenerational wealth transfer is definitely, I suspect, although I don't have the figures, I suspect that it is. Is definitely a factor. I have heard that at age 55, many people don't actually want to keep their full retirement sum in their CPF because they want to help their children buy property. Because that lump sum, you can reduce it to their basic retirement sum, and that's like 6-digit sum, and they help their children with it, again on the belief that property always goes up. This is not necessarily a very good thing because if the young people are depending on their parents and reducing their parents' retirement adequacy, there will be implications down the road.
So let's hang on to your thought about the mortgage, but I want to quickly ask Nicholas about the future of prices, because we actually came across a report by DBS last year. So it kind of predicted that property prices could go up by up to 55% higher than what it is now by 2040. So the average per square feet could reach $4,000, about double what it is now. So what does it mean for the property market if prices keep going up this way?
Well, firstly, I think the estimation could hold because, you see, in the last 10 years, the HDB resale price has increased by about 50%. 50% in the last 10 years. And for private property, the price index has increased by 52% in the last 10 years. So we're talking about from now until 2040, that's roughly about 13 to 14 years' time. But for it to grow by 55%, I think that's possible, provided that we are growing at about the same rate of growth as what has been seen in the last 10 years.
Actually, it's not that much on an annualized basis. So if you're 2040 is about 15 years, 55%, if you decompose it on a compound annual growth rate, it's about 3%. Yeah. And that's quite in line with growth, and even income growth or nominal 3% is actually not too far off.
Yeah. It's a thing about, seems like $1 million flats, people say, wow, how can HDB flat hit $1 million flat? And now 6 out of every 100 transacted HDB resale flats are $1 million flats or above. And some are reaching levels, the record is about $1.73 million. So it's that, in a way, they say money is getting smaller, or it's due to inflation, right? And that is why that number may seem scary now, $2 million, $4 million for a condo unit, but it will come to pass.
Yeah, it's a price to income that you need to take into account, not just the absolute price. Right?
Precisely.
Yeah, so there was a study done by the Urban Land Institute, which is a non-profit in the UK, and they examined all the price to income ratios for median home price to median incomes in 2024, I believe, and they used the median resale price of Singapore HDB flats against the median income, and they found that we are at 4.3 times. Now that's actually quite healthy, right? Because it's five times is like kind of a threshold about when it becomes unaffordable. Now this is HDB resale, but of course the issue is that what in the previous generation this would have gotten you is different from what it will get you today. So you can't get your Toa Payoh 4-room flat, resale at that median price is about maybe their calculation was about 600 plus thousand. You just have to accept that it will be further out, right? So it is this kind of thing that you can call it shrinkflation, or the way that the property market is sort of adjusts. But I guess you can't say that just with price point it is unaffordable. It is always relative to your income growth.
Yeah.
And on a very personal basis, your ability to continue to grow your income and to maintain employment income consistently becomes very important. And here is where there is some risk.
Yeah, because that's a big if. There's a big if
Yes.
that given the global situation in the job market, I will be able to hold on to my job at this income. I mean, tomorrow, my editor could say like, okay, we're just going to drop your income and you do 1 show a month, and then it's like, okay, I need to find like extra sources of income, right? But there's a big if happening here, right?
Yeah.
Yes. You see, some to stretch their dollar to buy that more expensive condo unit or HDB resale flat, for example, some of the younger home buyers will try to stretch the maximum loan tenure to as far as they can go, right? Okay, that's one. But now with the age of AI, where AI is basically everywhere invading all our workplace, some jobs is going to become obsolete, maybe in the next 1 to 4 years. And yet they are taking on 30 years mortgage. Can they ensure that some of them will think after 4 years I'm going to flip the property anyway. So, but then the thing is that will your job still be relevant? Will you still be able to have that same income growth that your parents were accustomed to for the next 25 to 30 years?
So I have a slightly different take on this. The same issue about affordability and whether you can maintain it, but perhaps just a slight difference on the details. I think when it comes to affordability, the ability to service your mortgage is the key thing. Yeah, and if you lose your income, you need that buffer. So if you stretch your TDSR, right, you to that 55% stress test under today's interest rate, let's say about 1.5%, your actual TDSR now is say about 40%. So if you do the calculations, right, so that means 40% of your income goes into the mortgage. Now, are you able to stomach an increase in the interest rate? And this is not so long ago that we had that increase, right? So you're talking about if you're on a 2 million property, if interest rate goes to 3%, you might actually be paying another 1,000 plus more, right? Do you have that buffer if you max out? Because that's what the bank is able to lend you, right? So you need to be able. Affordability is what you can, not just what you are allowed to borrow. It is also based on what you can sustainably pay. That means it has to be that with a buffer. So, but having said that, I actually think that stretching a tenure out is a good thing because while of course the issue is that you have to continue paying quite a lot and for a long time, and at the same time you pay a lot more interest, but cash flow is very important when it comes to your day-to-day management, because if you shorten your tenure by say 20 years, that's an extreme, you could actually end up paying, let's say for a 1 million condo, instead of 2,006, you end up paying like 6,000 something, right? And so then cash flow will stress you. So it's not a bad idea, because housing debt, in a sense, to me, is a bit of good debt, because it helps you manage your housing costs, and it tends to be quite low. Yeah. So I would say that don't go out and just pay down your mortgage, because when you transform your liquid assets into an illiquid asset, you can get yourself caught in a very uncomfortable position if you lose your job and you have that stress when cash becomes precious.
But how do you know if the amount of debt you have is healthy or not? Like, are homeowners like stretching their limits? Are people living like paycheck to paycheck just to put down the mortgage and then plus their other financial commitments? This might not be their only. So they might have the car and the Bentley, and they might have children to look after with enrichment classes.
Yes.
So how do we know if my debt is healthy or not?
So for me, and MoneyOwl will say that, okay, TDSR is one thing, the bank's TDSR, but we actually recommend that your TDSR be around 35%, right? And at any time, because you have that buffer, And over time, if your income increases, this should come down because your income increases, your debt doesn't. So these are some of the financial health tips. And of course, you're having an emergency fund, what we call a liquidity fund, about at least, sometimes they say 3 months. I think that's too little. I think you should, in this environment, you should be talking about 6 to 12 months so that you can have to cushion for all these shocks. Yeah. Otherwise, you end up your TDS are really like 50% in reality, then your interest rate goes up. Then how much? What about tuition? Another 1,000. It's too much.
You see, the rule of thumb is actually your accommodation costs, be it rental or mortgage and so on, should not take up more than 1/3. Okay, some advisors might say 1/4, 25%. Some may say up to 1/3, 33% of your disposable income. Okay, that's about the rule of thumb. TDSR allow you up to 55%.
Yeah, 55.
But if anyone is approaching up to that, you're going to be compromising other aspects, whether other types of household expenses, your children's, whether you can afford extra tuition for your children or holiday and so on. And the other thing is you also have less money to save, which means you have less buffer for downturns.
And retirement.
Yes. I think the other thing about property play, why property attracts so many buyers to go in, even though we see these skyrocketing prices, is that it is one of the more it's one form of assets where the bank are more ready to loan. So it's an asset, it's a leverage play.
Yeah.
If you were to buy stocks and shares, things that are more volatile, the banks, the margin that they're willing to lend you is actually less compared to property. You can loan almost 75% of the value of the property from bank. You probably can't do that with more volatile assets.
You probably shouldn't as well.
Yes, but you see, the leverage play in a way magnify your returns.
Yeah.
Magnify your return, but you also magnify the risk, which is something that many people ignore. They only look at the return side, and they don't. They basically are not aware, or they are blissfully unaware of that there is also something that it can be quite detrimental during a property downturn, especially a sustained one that's created by a very bad recession.
I want to go back to a group of people Chuin Ting brought up, which is the parents who actually take out of their retirement fund or from their CPF to help their children pay for this. So if we're talking about risk and downtime and everything, then what happens to the parents who help buy these properties? Are there risks for them?
Of course. I mean, if you look at the full retirement sum, today is just over 200 plus thousand. If you look at the figures of how many percent of 55-year-olds actually attain that sum in cash. In cash, in cash, I mean in the CPF balances, not in property value and all that. It's actually under 50%. Right? So if parents are still taking it out to finance their, to help their children, then this will affect the retirement income they can get from their CPF Life, the annuity. So just to give a sense of the numbers, if you have the full retirement sum, you're getting a monthly income in 10 years' time, that means it's 65, of about nominally maybe 1,700 in today's dollars, maybe 1,400. So that's not a luxurious retirement income. Right? So then the parents will have to monetize their house in some way. So I would maybe urge children, as in young adults, to be somewhat considerate for their parents as well, and parents, maybe you might need to also think about yourself, and especially you need to understand that property is not the only way for people, including your young adult children, to make money or to build wealth. Yeah, there are other ways that have less chunkier risk.
So in other words, if you love your elderly parents, please don't take too much of their money.
Yes.
Okay, great PSA, Nicholas. So I want to ask you specifically, because if we've been talking about it, and of course there's this belief in Singapore that your home is your retirement plan, right? So if you upgrade, the asset appreciates, then you downsize when you're older, and then you live on the difference, right? But if we are paying like $2 million or $3 million for a new condo, will we still see that much profit in the future?
I think it's possible if past what happened the past trends in the Singapore property market continues into the future. All right, which means prices rise more often than they fall. Right? So that's one. But our demographics are also changing in the sense that, firstly, we'll have more singles. Okay, maybe we'll come to that a bit later, but we have an aging population. Okay, so that means there are more people, there are a growing group of now people who are asset rich and cash poor. So they may need to downgrade. And some of them might be thinking, I'll downgrade to HDB resale flats, sell my private property, hopefully make a big gain, and then downgrade, and the difference can be used for my retirement. But the other thing is this, is that a growing number of new launches, I say that right now way over 90% of the units sold are actually 99-year leasehold properties. Freehold properties are getting lesser and lesser. I mean, the launches are getting lesser. They're out there, just that not enough on block sales, so we don't have a lot of that. Many people are not, or they are blissfully unaware that 99 years property, they will depreciate after some time, right? Because the lease is getting shorter and the building is getting older. While freehold property is like gold. The land value does not depreciate. 99 years is a bit like iron or steel. They will rust and their value will corrode. At the end of 99 years, you are left with nothing, right? So we have a group of people, aging population, people buying more 99-year leasehold property that will depreciate after 30 years, 40 years, especially when these people are near their retirement age. And then, so what's going to happen? Maybe this problem's not going to really hit us now or in 10 years' time, but it could be a problem 20 to 30 years down the road.
I mean, there's a lot of problems coming out in this episode. But for those listening to this podcast and they don't have parents who can help them with the down payment, and they look at HDB resale flats breaking resale record prices, right? And then the BTO is a long wait, or they are in the range where they hit the BTO income ceiling, but they're not quite there to buy a condo. You know, what's the solution to finding a house? Like, will we just see people who are priced out of the market and are just stuck?
I would say they're priced out of the market. If you can make $15,000 the household income, you're not poor. You're above that. The Singapore median household income level.
Well, then particularly people who are single, maybe making about 8-9K, then, you know, as you mentioned, the number of singles are growing in the market. So these people will have struggle, or they will see their income being stretched when they take on loans, I would think, Chuin Ting.
I think there are enough accommodation options if you're just talking about housing and owning a home. But it is whether you feel that you want to, say, get a subsidy, then you go and join the BTO queue for those who are eligible. And yes, as a single, you do have lower priority.
Yes, and it's also not that much subsidy for
not
singles.
that much. Yeah. Then it's between resale and do you really want to stretch and sort of stress yourself out? You know, is there so much enjoyment in that? If you stretch, the house is small, and then you have to worry whether you lose your job. You know, not the nicest way to live, right? So I think it is about accepting that prices might be high, but there are options for you to own your home. I would still recommend owning a home because you don't want to be subject to rental issues and all that. And then look for other ways to grow your wealth, right? And not just think that it has to be a property and a private property. I think going forward, I'm not good at forecasting, but even if you look at what DBS has done at that kind of 3% increase, and it's actually lower than what it has been. And structurally, the economy is just in that state where we are not going to grow at high single digit anymore. We're going to grow at low single digit. And property prices are structurally tied to that. And there's also the policy dilemmas that we have over HDB, right? Because there's an issue of VERS, you know, as the lease decay of HDB. What is going to happen there, I think, is not so clear, but there are clear signals that you're not going to get big windfalls out of at least HDB. And HDB is 80%, right, of the market. So if that doesn't happen for HDB, then what does it? What's the implication for everything else, right? I think those policy dilemmas are very real, and we will need to have the government have more options. And so you can't depend on the past performance to project that your property appreciation will be there. So I would say if you get a windfall from your property, private or HDB, treat it as what it is, a windfall, but don't let it be your main financial plan. Own your home, use it as a home mainly, and then learn how to do other investments. Invest in the globally diversified way and all that. And be a topic of CPF, and then Singaporeans will learn how to that their financial and investment literacy actually goes up in that sense.
I just like to add 2 points. Number one, you mentioned about VERS. We don't have all the details yet, still akan datang. So now the thing is that I think VERS is going to have a very strong ripple effect on the private housing market as well, because the HDB market basically forms the bedrock of the whole housing market in Singapore, with 80% of residents living in it. If the government, I have a feeling that the government is going to structure in such a way that the policy will return to fundamental, which is that public housing is supposed to be a home. So they may structure it that for aging HDB flats that are eligible for VERS, they will make sure that they'll give the owners the options that you can have a replacement flat where you can live out until the age of maybe 100, for example. Or so. So you will not see that big windfall. You'll not see your replacement flat will not see that big cash appreciation. It's a home that you're supposed to have to live out, and which means that these people, maybe they're elderly or there are still some young people who are buying old HDB flats. Don't expect that big capital appreciation anymore,
because they see it as a home that they can, live in and make it their own, and
Yes.
they appreciate it for the neighborhood and stuff like that, right?
Precisely. And then this is going to have an impact on that upgraders' demand, because in a way it's driven by the liquidity from the capital gain from the HDB resale market, right? So the VERS policies is going to impact the private housing market. The second point is that it's also a way advices to people who own home ownership. I know you promote home ownership, so do I. Especially buying one's own home, is that when you buy a home, and you're paying mortgage, but think of it, what's the alternative? The opportunity cost is that if you rent that same home, you may be paying $4,000 rental, $5,000 rental. In a way, that home of yours is generating this service to you.
Yes.
That is equivalent to that rental. So you're gaining or consuming this housing service from your home. So think about that way. Maybe it might make some homeowners feel better.
Okay. Well, I want to end off with this question. Whether it's on Reddit or in real life, we're constantly complaining about property prices. We do. Okay. Nobody come for me. Okay. We do. Okay. And yet the sales numbers actually tell a very different story, that we're ultimately still a market of willing buyers going by the prices in Tengah and Vella Bay. So if people want to pay, why should the government step in with cooling measures?
I think that why government need to come in with cooling measures is because the market, in a way, is going out of whack. That's why the government needs to come in to intervene, right? And what they have done so far is actually the policy's direction is to limit investment demand, especially investment demand from foreigners, from hot money coming in. That's why we got 60% ABSD for foreigners. But they also leave certain side door open. One example is this. The ABSD for Singaporean buying a second property is based on individuals. So if let's say that household have 4 adults, two parents and 2 adult children, in a way they can own 4, and they're all Singapore citizens, in a way they can own 4 properties without paying ABSD. Now, if the government really wants to tighten the noose, they can make it as per household. That means each household can only own 1 property. The moment that household own the second property, you pay ABSD. All right, if they really want to make even tighter cooling measures. So That is, I'm not sure if they will go down that road, but it's going to be very unpopular with those who have the means to buy second and third property.
I can imagine that. Chuin Ting, do you have last words for us?
I think that people around the world have this rather irrational expectation that property prices should be low when I'm buying, and then they should be high when I want to sell.
I need a profit, right?
Yeah. So I think that and that's an impossible policy task to please everyone. You can see in other cities where there are very little cooling measures or rather differentiation between foreigners and all that, like London and all this. You really end up that your locals are really priced out. Okay? So do we want to have a society in which we sort of kill aspirations, for a better life, especially for first timers or first time upgraders, right? I think we have to be careful because just as we were saying that if you can only own that private property because you need some help from daddy, mummy, but what if I am a self-made professional and I must be able to have that ability if I aspire to be able to own that. So you have to moderate that price increase and not otherwise you create this big dichotomy, right? Those with rich parents to give them the equity can earn private property and everyone else
Just deals with
can't, right?
Yes.
So okay, I'm not saying that you should own private property because you need to take into account your affordability and the risk and all that. But we should not have, we should be aware of the societal consequences of letting the prices go out of whack and sort of like, letting just the free market just run. So it's the same way like health insurance, private health, right? So public health is very affordable, but private health care and private healthcare costs and insurance costs have also gone up a lot. And why did the government step in, right? Because all these actually have an impact on Singaporeans and have an impact on the industry where the doctors go, and you actually have an impact on capacity as well because if people can't buy the private the healthcare, can't consume that, they actually all end up in public, and then what will happen to public prices as well and public capacity?
Do you think that prices are reaching a level where aspirations are being snuffed out?
I think not yet because just now like I showed you the TDSR calculations. I think it's still possible. And in the Reddit and all this, I hear young people saying, I want to do 100,000 by say 100,000 by age 30, right? So I think it's not a bad thing. And the other part I see as a silver lining is that it teaches people that property, okay, even if I can't own private property, that's not necessarily means that I'm a failure or the end of the world. Or maybe I can't own it now, but I can learn how to invest. So I do see that. A positive silver lining there. Yeah. So I think we are not there, but I think that's the reason why we do need some policy interventions.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I know there are people who have not gotten to the property ladder, they haven't bought a home, and they are afraid that even buying a HDB flat might be getting out of reach. But in a way, Singapore is much more fortunate than other Asian countries because we have this big public housing system that is basically making the first step, buying a BTO flat, as affordable as possible to first-time home buyers. Other countries in Taiwan, South Korea, Philippines, and so on, they don't have, the government are unable to come up with such a system due to various restrictions. So in a way, we can say that we are more blessed than other countries. But the government is also quite watchful because one of the problems with this escalating price is that we're going to have a widening wealth gap. Yeah. We're going to have this gap between the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots are those who have not bought property yet. And also the top 5% or in the income group will be able to accumulate more wealth by buying more properties and then passing on to their children. And yes, the bank of daddy and money is not just really, it doesn't just apply to those who are just struggling to buy a EC or whatever. It's also up there, those who are buying good class bungalows, right? So they are accumulating wealth there. And so that is also another thing that the government should also look at, is how to level the playing field.
You've given me, and I hope our viewers, a lot to think about. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having us.
And that's it from The Usual Place. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, do subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss new episodes of the podcast. Now, if you have thoughts on what we just discussed, do drop a comment on YouTube or talk to me on Instagram at The Usual Place Podcast. I'll see you next Thursday.